So you'd think that after the car was finally sprayed in its last clear coat, that the paint job would be largely finished. But in the case of our '68 Camaro, we still had a long way to go. After the clear coat had finally cured and the solvents had evaporated out of it, Nathan attacked the car with more sandpaper. In this case, he started with an 800 grit to start knocking down a few high spots and a little bit of the dust that accumulated in the paint booth. Now, 800 grit sounds like a fine grit, but when you're color sanding or wet sanding a final paint job, it's actually kind of rough. But the reason why he did that is he wanted to use what he calls a paint stick, which is, evolves from a good old-fashioned wooden stir stick with sandpaper wrapped around it. Now he actually uses a rigid Durablock. But the goal is to mow down all the clear on the high spots, especially on the stripes, because we didn't want to be able to rub our hand over the car and feel the different levels of paint, to be able to feel the stripes. So Nathan applied enough clear so that when those stripes were finally sanded, you won't be able to feel them with your hand if you touch the car. Once he got the high spots with the 800 grit, Nathan hand sanded the entire car again with 1000 grit and then 1500 grit and then finally with 2000 grit sandpaper to make sure that all the panels were flat, smooth, and level. But the sanding wasn't done yet because the next step uses an air sander and 3M's Trizact ultrafine sanding system.
Okay, I'm using the 3000 Trizact system here. It's a 3000 grit pad. I've sanded the whole car down to 2000 wet. Nice and slick, got all the dirt out of it. And this is a refinement scratch on it. It kind of halfway buffs it for you.
The Trizact system looks kind of scary because he's using a power tool on a freshly painted car. But this sandpaper is so fine that it doesn't even feel like a grit when you feel it with your hand. It feels more like a towel. And Nathan again sanded the entire car with a couple different levels of the Trizact. And when it was finished, this car, before even being buffed, looks like many cars that are freshly painted. I mean, it doesn't make it super glossy shiny, but the panels were nice and flat and it provided a nice base to buff quickly. The next step is to finally start polishing the car with compound, and we use a 3M compound system. The first is the most aggressive grit. He also uses a smaller 3-inch air-powered polisher to reach the contours and areas that the larger polisher won't get into. Once the car has been polished with the coarse grit, Nathan moves to a foam pad and machine glaze, and again polishes the whole car one more time. And this starts to make the car really start to shine. Now, every stage of the polishing game makes the surface scratches a little bit more fine because they're still there, but we're just reducing them, making them smaller and smaller so that A, you can't see them, and B, they reflect less scattered light and they start to reflect more sharply and more focused, which makes the car look shinier and it has a more distinctive reflective image. The last step in the machine polish is using the ultra-fine machine glaze and a soft blue foam pad. And by this time, any surface scratches are virtually eliminated and you're left with a surface that, they say it looks like a mirror, and they say it for good reason, because everything it reflects has a very focused, clear, distinct image, and it makes the car look like it's wet. This thing, it really is coming out fantastic. But again, we're still not quite finished because once the whole car is finally assembled, Nathan will go over it with a hand glaze and make it look that much nicer. But at this point, we're very happy with the results. And now you can really appreciate all the layers underneath the final shine, all the previous layers of sanding, from getting the metal work right in the beginning, through the body work, the polyester, the primers, all the sanding and polishing, because when you get to this final stage of putting the ultra-fine machine glaze on, if there's a scratch under the surface or if there's something that's not right in the way the paint laid out, it's going to be like a magnifying glass and it's really going to stand out. And we're fortunate that the crew did a great job on this car and it's really standing tall.